Have you ever had a thought so disturbing that your first reaction wasn't fear, but suspicion? Not, why did this appear, but, what does this say about me? That single question has trapped more people than temptation ever could. Because the moment a thought is treated as evidence, the interior life quietly turns against itself. The soul does not merely suffer confusion, it begins to accuse itself. And the tradition does not respond to this problem the way most people expect. Dissent, when appearance is mistaken for identity. You did not choose the thought. You did not agree with it. You may have been repulsed by it. And yet, the moment it appeared, something inside you whispered, "If this came from me, it must mean something about who I am." That whisper feels responsible. It feels vigilant. It feels honest. But it is the beginning of a mistake. Not a moral failure, a mistake about what a thought actually is. The will is not passive, but it is not the author of everything it encounters. Escalation. The soul begins to contract. Once appearance is mistaken for ownership, the soul begins to contract. It hesitates. It circles. It watches itself watching itself. And the more carefully the soul observes itself, the less free it becomes. By this point, the interior life has already begun to bend inward, though the person may not yet realize it. Fear enters, not as panic, but as weight. Thought narrows. Possibility collapses. The future feels heavy before it arrives. The person no longer feels like one who encounters storms. They begin to feel like the storm itself. And life quietly reshapes itself around that belief. Tradition enters, not as correction, but recognition. Long before psychology had language for intrusive loops or interior arrest, the Christian tradition observed the same phenomenon and named it with greater precision. The early ascetical writers noticed that the most dangerous interior disturbances do not arrive as temptations demanding consent. They arrive as interpretations. They persuade the soul that presence implies ownership, that disturbance implies guilt, that repetition implies desire. They do not shout, they explain. And explanation, when false, binds more effectively than force. St. John Cassian articulated the turning point with devastating clarity. It is one thing to have evil thoughts, and another to consent to them. For the mere suggestion of evil is not in our power, but consent is. With this single distinction, the prison becomes visible. A thought is no longer a verdict. It is an event. And events are not identities. What appears in the intellect is not yet an act of the will. What disturbs the emotions is not yet a moral choice. The soul is not condemned by what it suffers. Aquinas. The moral line is drawn. St. Thomas Aquinas receives this wisdom and renders it exact. He states the governing principle of the entire moral life. So true is it that every sin is voluntary, that unless it be voluntary, it is no sin at all. This means something precise. Fear may arise without consent. Shame may strike before reflection. A bodily response may precede reason. And Aquinas is explicit. Passion is not sin unless it be voluntary. Interior disturbance is not guilt, because the will alone bears moral responsibility. As Aquinas in the Summa Theologiae clarifies, the act of the will is the act of a rational power. The will is not determined by bodily turbulence. It judges, it consents, or it refuses. The lower faculty, when judgment misfires. There is a lower power within the human soul that rushes to judge what appears. Its task is simple: to name things quickly, as safe or dangerous, good or bad, based on past experience. When the soul is wounded, fatigued, or overwhelmed, this power can misfire. A passing thought is no longer registered as noise. It is labeled as a threat. And that false label strikes the body before reason has time to speak. Fear arises. Shame follows. The soul recoils. This is not yet sin. It is a disturbance in the lower faculties, not a decision of the will. The tradition calls this quick judging power the cogitative faculty. Its danger lies not in its existence, but in the authority it is mistakenly granted. The false piety trap, when vigilance becomes surveillance. Many souls believe they are being holy when they scrutinize every thought. But vigilance without authority becomes surveillance, and surveillance produces fear, not freedom. The interior life begins to collapse inward. Purity is confused with control. Attention turns obsessive. The self becomes the horizon. The enemy does not always tempt the soul toward vice. Sometimes he tempts it toward self-focus, toward a spiritual life that never leaves the mirror. Scrupulosity is not a sign of high virtue. It is the soul bending inward under the weight of misplaced attention. Thomistic clarity, the test of certainty. Catholic moral theology is exact here. Mortal sin requires full knowledge and deliberate consent. Where these are truly absent, guilt is not present. And the very confusion that scrupulosity produces is often evidence that the will has not embraced what it fears. Sin does not begin where sensation arises. It begins where the will assents. The value mirror. Why the thoughts strike what you love. This is why the thoughts that disturb a person most often aim at what that person values most. The loving parent is haunted by harm. The faithful soul by blasphemy. The conscientious by failure. The distress is not a sign of corruption. It is a sign of love under threat. Often, it is the cost of caring deeply in a fallen world. What the mind circles begins to feel heavier, not because it is true, but because attention grants it weight. Order, not control. The restoration of authority. The tradition does not answer this condition with argument. It answers with order. Freedom returns when authority is restored to its proper place. Fuel is removed from the lower faculties. The imagination is rebuilt through prayer. The day is given structure. And the will quietly exercises its veto, observing without obeying. The soul is no longer treated as a courtroom. It is restored as a place of direction. The lag. Why peace does not arrive immediately. Do not expect the emotions to quiet instantly. The will moves by command, but the passions move by habit, and habit unwinds more slowly than choice. The lower faculties are heavy. They turn slowly. They continue to vibrate after the will has already spoken. Do not mistake this noise for failure. It is merely momentum. Peace is not emotional relief. It is the tranquility that arises when the soul is rightly ordered toward its end. Thoughts may still appear, but they no longer rule. They are recognized as visitors, not authorities. And the soul, no longer collapsed inward, begins to expand again. The final liberation is not learning how to control thought. It is remembering that you were never identical with what merely passed through you. A thought may appear, but it does not speak for you. That authority belongs to the will. And when that truth is recovered, the prison dissolves.